Listen is Stephen Cramer's sixth poetry collection. His previous books are The Eye That Desires to Look Upward, The World Book, Dialogue for the Left and Right Hand, Goodbye to the Orchard, and Clangings. Goodbye to the Orchard won the Sheila Motten Prize for the New England Poetry Club and was named an honor book in poetry by the Massachusetts Center for the Book. His work has appeared in the Atlantic Monthly, the Parish Review, Plowshares Poetry, and many other journals. He's a recipient of grants from the Mass Cultural Council and a National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship. He also founded and now teaches in the low residency MFA program in creative writing at Lesley University. Stephen Cramer.
I want to first get rid of myself. I'm looking at myself right now. And there we go. I don't want to read to myself. Are you able to hear me? Yeah. Yeah. What's the Zoom equivalent for thank you all for coming? I don't know. Thank you all for being here, I guess. Thank you, Andrea, for keeping this remarkable institution going. To read with Joyce is, for me, and I think maybe for Joyce, to remember to always have in the front of our minds a group of three with Teresa Cater, Joyce, Teresa, and I. There's not a single poem that I'm going to read tonight or that I've read out loud or to myself for the last 15 years, Joyce? I think so, that we haven't shared and that hasn't gone through their ringer. So I'm just incredibly grateful for that. And Gail, thank you so much for Blacksmith, but also, I don't know if you remember, first time I read a Blacksmith beforehand, I was terrified and you said, if it's a good thing to do and it scares you, you do it. And I've never forgotten that. And in fact, what I'm going to read tonight kind of scares me, but it's a good thing, I think, to do. And if it's okay, I'd like to dedicate the reading to Hillary, my wife. Emily Dickinson said to Higginson, of the greatest acts we are ignorant, you do not know that you saved my life. Hillary knows that she saved my life, and what she saved my life from, these poems are that I'm going to read just from the first section are deal with, give form to. The first one is called Bad. It got bad, pretty bad, then not so bad, very bad, then back to bad. Jesus, let's let things not get even worse. A weird fall, nearly 90 one day, leaf mold making the house, all red eyes and throats. Don't think about Thanksgiving, but hope for a decent Halloween. Everywhere gas-powered leaf blowers growling. Christ, let's let things not get even worse. This is called South Belknap. Jake says, first time I recall wanting to die, I was 8. When I tried and nearly did, I really wanted to live. The room has gone around the room. First names only and favorite foods. Danielle said, I hate food. Lois says, I know what happened only once. I also know it's happening all the time. In jogging shorts, his knees scabbed like an 8-year-old's. Seth says, I hope to radically accept distress from now on and maybe bear it skillfully. Blue of 2 spruce trees, the burnt orange brick face of admission, summer green of the lawns. Mark writes on the whiteboard, men are not disturbed by things, but by the view they take of them. while most scribble this sentence into notebooks on their laps. 2 or 3 look out the one window. They see water from a fountain surge, plume, crest, then fall into a pond no bigger than a toddler's pool. And a boy with sinewy clots of hair, still as a page in a picture book, bows to read his cell phone, and sparrows fly into and out from the azaleas, and roses flicker, fire from a magician's fingertips. Everybody can hear me okay? Out there? In Denver, you can hear me, and in London, you can hear me. This is a poem called Zuni Fetishes Santa Fe. It takes place in Santa Fe, or almost all. A Zuni fetish is a small carving. You can buy them in the thousands in Santa Fe. They were made by Native American people and are supposed to be good luck creatures. There's a reference to a river. There's a reference to Ghost Ranch, where George O'Keeffe lived and worked, and much earlier dinosaurs lived and worked, and a reference to Echo Amphitheater, where there were 2 massacres in the 1860s. And the legend is that the blood is still in the rocks, and your own echo echoes the cries of the slaughtered. It's a lot of armature. Zuni Fetishes, Santa Fe. Raven eats maize. Badger, ground turquoise. Eagle, the guts of slain prey. But what could feed this being dry as fossilized dung? You took me in hand. We looked at mesas, cottonwoods, arroyos. The Rio Chama wound its umber cure our way. Such medicines I spat back and studied instead the raptor's femur at Ghost Ranch, my soul hollow as O'Keeffe's ram skull. Under the crags of Echo Amphitheater, I watched for the blood of the slaughtered, said to have entered the pores of the rock, so our echoes echo their cries. And now we're back. The night skies sucked in its stars, speed limits shrink. We have to trace our snow prints to relieve the dog. What I love most about you is your patience, the way you check my climate while I shadow box with silence. But first, love, help me stop playing dead. The book has, and I should maybe mention, the other 3 sections get lighter than this section. In fact, I want to thank Joan Houlihan, actually, who read the manuscript and said to me, Stephen, start dark. And I took her advice. This poem is called The World. It's prose. Balancing on his haunches, snapping at a stuffed frog I dangle above his jaws, Zeus's front paws look puny as a kangaroo's. He can hold the position for an astonishing 8 to 10 seconds. If I were an honest parent, I'd explain to him the futility of changing one's nature, like trying to mate different species of butterflies. There he goes again, little boxer. And here I go again, remembering the June my rage overheated until it pounded music out of the stereo with a mallet. Everyone I loved stopped their horseplay. I saw 2 futures, one a moonlit shoreline, one a diagnosis. There was a 3rd future I didn't see. Although I haven't yet used the word world, When I do, I won't mean what that woman meant, indexed to her temple as she asked, how do you bring the world into your thinking about art? That whole summer, my black razor point pens, when laid side by side, looked like bodies in body bags. Ah, a little reprieve. This poem steals from two different Laura Jensen poems. I adore Laura Jensen's work. There's also a reference, there's the word Salishan, which is an Oregon coastal resort. And it's a word that comes from a family of Native American languages, but that has nothing to do with the poem. I just like the sound of it. This is called I Want That. As I lay down, too tired to believe, is a line I love by Laura Jensen. I imagine it coming to her quickly, like dictation, like cold with snow. I want that. How I want that. And the night I believed I sat in a chair in the middle of the sea and yet could see the shoreline, lights, dune grass, a hut, and bluffs behind them, bright as if on fire. Oh, I want them. I want them back like the waterfall a child built of cheesecloth, paper mache, wire. I called it Salishan, a name sounding like silver buffed up to a shine. I want that shine too, a ton of it. I brush my hand across rough cotton, here or here, and notice if I'm naked, the pelt of shower water against my skin, the scent of scentless soap, the weight my feet confer to the tub floor. Today, I'll amble through the city's jazz of rain, and the voice beneath my scalp that says there's little to no point, or voice. A couple poems in this section look elsewhere, and this is one. It's a three-part adaptation of three poems by Asa Mandelstam. One of the things I do often when I need to get started writing again is try to find the worst translations I can of poems that I know are good, are great, maybe even great, and try to poem them up and make them good. It's a little hubristic, I know, but it works for me. And I did this for these three Mandelstam poems from a selected poems that doesn't need more readers, I'll just say that. One of them was written in 1909 when he was 18. One is better known as they're all untitled. The second one is known as the Stalin epigram. It mentions Stalin as the Kremlin mountaineer. He read it at a couple private readings, and there was clearly an informer at one of the readings. And that was when he was first arrested, I believe. The third poem was written in 1937 in Voronezh, where he was exiled with his wife. Three versions of Mandelstam 1909. What should I do with this body? I'm it and it's me. Who do I thank for the quiet luck of breath, for being alive? Please tell me. I'm very good at gardening and flowering. I'm my own companion in the world's solitary. Breathing on the window of infinity, I can see a pattern in the warm haze left on the glass. a sign I hadn't recognized till now. It condenses, gone, but the design I love can't be effaced. That stays. 1933. We live numb to the homeland under our feet. Get too close, our whispers disperse to mist. But anywhere you stop to talk, the talk gravitates toward the Kremlin mountaineer. Fingers fat as earthworms, his thumbs slugs, his every word a gram, a pound, a ton. Laughter wets his roach brown upper lip. It glitters, spit, and polish like his boots. His thuggish chicken men encircle him. One by one, as he dandles them, they croon and simper, or meow, Siberian cats. But only he's allowed to bellow out sentence after sentence, like horseshoes flung at the groin, brain, forehead, eyes. A firing squad floods his mouth with sweet relish, his chest warm as a hug from home. Voronezh, 1937. I'm still not dead. I have company in a woman wearing the sort of rags I wear. Across the tundra, bliss still reaches me through fog and squalling snow and hunger. My poverty's a miracle. What I lack, a type of wealth. Alone, heartened, at peace, I kneel to the night and to the day. Work that sings from a full throat must be blameless. The sad man runs from snarling dogs on a shadow's orders into the wind's edge. The poor man, waking from a coma, begs his shadow. Can you spare some change? Okay, I'm just going to read two more. I think I have time. Two more. This is called Costco. My son's friend Dave Kilbridge made a video, a trailer using this poem. And he's open for business if anybody wants to do a book trailer. I'm very pleased with the results. There's a reference to putti, which are those little winged cherubs or cupids in Renaissance paintings. Tom Lux has a wonderful poem called Floating Babies about them. The poem ends up talking about a movie. It changed it. The movie was called The Incredible Shrinking Man, which used to show up on TV, a creature double feature in the afternoons. And I watched it God knows how many times. It is one of those not great movies that somehow wanders into profundity at the end. Costco. Jars of Heinz the size of Grecian urns, enough Reynolds wrap to foil an asteroid. Eros, in particular. Who's not aroused by sales? My cart's heavy as the Fiat. I watched 4 Romans lift into a spot downwind from the Colosseum's air of cat piss. Sun through skylights makes laptops, flat screens, and vats of tide shine. Putti-like, kind of. Sparrows loft down from the vaults. But when a day's gone oyster gray, its weight a 10-pound tub of putty. All the wholesale sponges in the world can't suck up this sense that I'm a poor, generic thing, reduced to creature double features, incredible, shrinking everyman. His six-pack pre-steroid, a 3-cent stamp for his loincloth. He dueled house cats with a safety pin, giving heart to boys small for their age, until he kept on shrinking to a voiceover of cosmic dust, hack actor risen to the stars. And I'll end with the title poem of the book. I think I'm doing all right. There's a wax cylinder recording of Whitman that I think of reading America that I think is still disputed. Mary Chilton was the first woman to step off the Mayflower. Mayflower Screwball comes from Lowell's Waking in the Blue. There's the word lunatic, but imagine it with spelled with T-I-C-K, lunatic, not the usual spelling. There's a reference to Anzio, a lot of references in this poem. And I say them at readings because I think you can't be Googling when you're listening. Anzio was where the Allies landed when they invaded Italy in World War II, and ECT is electroconvulsive therapy, and TMS is transcranial magnetic stimulation. Listen, can that really be Walt Whitman on a wax cylinder chanting America? Center of equal daughters, equal sons? Sounds like he's gargling pebbles. His larynx literally formed of this soil. In fact, he sounds like Uncle George, the one man in my family to kill Krauts in World War II and return drunk again. Most mornings, he nursed the same German Stein. So badly did he stutter, you'd think he licked all the alum off his styptic pencil. Some speculate that Edison recorded Whitman's trebly voice, another thing linking him to Lincoln, in West Orange, town I visited nearly every weekend since I adored my cousin Al, George's son. Al's mother's name, Aunt, I don't remember. I could phone Marty, the other of 2 siblings out of 4, left alive past 60. Family genealogist. She's traced Dad's line to Mary Chilton, first woman ashore at Plymouth, entitling me to Lowell's title, Mayflower Screwball. Why? Well, Marty found an 1830 Mendham census designating lunatic as Nathan Cooper Cramer's occupation. Dad chatted with his brother, Alfred, dead since Anzio, in his shaving mirror. And after ECT, TMS, and other acronyms for stir-fried brains, McLean's in my phone. How the hell did I get here? And what sector of my face do I first touch a razor to? The bedlam of thought I have in mind is a sputter of dissociation you only can talk down. No shock then, after Whitman's high wire aria, real or forged, after my pickled uncle's PTSD, after the father of the phonograph, after my pilgrim forebear who became an orphan 6 weeks after touching land. It's you I'll be listening to at the last. How resonant the bones of our middle ears. That's it. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you. Yeah,
Did I go too long?
yeah.
I will mute myself now.
Okay. Don't mute yourself for too long. We want to have your poems. Thank you. Petition is Joyce Peseroff's sixth book of poems. Her fifth collection, Know Thyself, was named a must-read by the 2016 Massachusetts Book Awards. She's been managing editor, associate poetry editor, and advisory editor for Plowshares magazine, and she edited the Plowshares Poetry Reader, Robert Bly, When Sleepers Awake, and Simply Lasting, Writers on Jane Kenyon. For 4 years, she directed the creative writing MFA program at UMass Boston. She currently blogs on writing and literature at joycepeseroff.com and is the poetry columnist for Aerosmith Press. Joyce Peseroff.
Thank you so much, Andrea. I've always felt that when a book comes out, it's not really out there until there's a reading at the Blacksmith house. So I want to thank you for inviting me. I want to thank Stephen for reading with me. We've been partners in reading each other's poems, as Stephen said, for probably around 15 years, if not more, the two of us and Teresa Cater. All had something to do with this new book. Oh, I was going to hold up the one without the sticky notes in it. And I guess you have to see the title in reverse. Stephen, I was listening to you read and I was thinking, only Stephen would put putti and kind of in the same sentence like that. So it was really a pleasure to hear that. I'm going to begin with the book's title poem, Petition. Petition. Give the wealth back to those we stole it from. Give the land back to those we stole it from. Give our shotguns to those we took the land from. Maybe they'll split the barrels into irrigation pipes. Maybe they'll mill the stocks for bookends, for the books by those we took language from. Give love back to those we banished from our love. Give life back to all who lost insurance for their meds. Give medicine back to those who find it in a tea, a weed, a willow, the heat and light in hands kneading a muscle. Give muscle to the tongue's backtalk, curses, and its sweetest nothings, the lay of a ripe peach. Give ripeness to a time. Give us time to restore the forests and the sea we filtered of whales, codfish, and pink dolphins. Give us eternity again. We'll set things right. This next poem is called Receipt. It's something you get whenever you make a transaction. Receipt. The cashier at CVS asks if I want a receipt, and I smile, no. The gas pump screen chimes receipt, yes/no. And I tap no since I heard the ink on the paper is carcinogenic, or maybe the paper itself. Buying groceries, I crumple a 2-foot printout I don't need since every transaction's recorded by my credit card and I don't bother with coupons. No one questions whether I own my lunch meat. or prescription, or the fuel that guns me out of town. I overheard a man laugh in Sears when asked if he wanted a bag for his gold toes. Are you kidding? A black man walking out of here with a pair of socks in his hand? Whereas I disdain plastic bags that might stuff a landfill. Whereas no one will ask whether I own the shoes I wear leaving the store, my old sandals left in a box for the clerk to dispose of. In 3 towns, in 3 states, no one looks twice when I drop something into my purse. Could be nail polish, could be a gun, could be a bottle I'm nipping at. Hello, hashtag white lady feminist who never got a ticket. Always a warning. Okayed for TSA pre-check. If I want to return a sweater, I'll return the sweater with or without a receipt. This next poem is based on information from a book that became very popular a few years ago called The Hidden Life of Trees by Peter Wohlleben. And this was a first in a series of books titled The Mysteries of Nature series. And trees were the first. I think that there might be a small anthology of poems written inspired by that book. And as I was putting this together, excited by The Hidden Life of Trees, I was doing some Google research on memorial groves because I wasn't sure whether cedars or what sort of tree was most often planted in someone's memory. And that's when I found the little news item #1 on the Google search that makes it into this poem. The Hidden Life of Trees. Trees want to be tight, dense forests. I read in a book manufactured from their bodies. A seedling planted solo suffers like a prisoner locked in solitary, while the forest's a gang sharing candy and muscle. A stump can live 300 years if its fellow bloods chip in on life support, roots connecting like electric cords. Once I paid to plant a tree in memory of my grandfather, one of the murdered, and to make the desert bloom. What blooms in a desert? Murder. As con men on the hilly, arid site uproot one group of saplings, so another day's busload of the bereaved will have some spade work to do. I've been called for jury duty 3 or 4 times. Only once was I ever actually on a case. But this is about the last time I was called, and the poem is Jury Duty. There's an allusion to something in Langston Hughes's biography, and the second writer who's mentioned in this poem is Tobias Wolff. Jury duty. Langston Hughes threw all his books into the Atlantic Ocean. Textbooks from Columbia, novels, poems. He decided to read people instead. Another writer jumped ship when he saw a fellow sailor wanted to kill him. There's always a way to die on a boat. Now I've appropriated 2 stories from 2 men, one black, one white. I could say I've boxed 100 books for the dumpster, or escaped from the car of a possible rapist, the Porsche still moving, and saw him on campus a number of times. Time numbs, or doesn't. Sitting in a jury room, ready to be excused or sworn, I study the fact of so much depends. One word against another, a record in black and white, we, the people, transcribe, if we're not dismissed, which is what the woman I read reading beside me hopes and desires. I grew up in New York City in the 50s, and this poem is set there about the days when the nuclear threat was hanging over all of us, and the duck and cover days where we were taught to hide under our desks. And this poem also mentions the nuclear clock, which I think was on the cover and still might be, of the Journal of the Bureau of Atomic Scientists, which always had a clock with hands either closer or further apart from midnight. The other thing I allude to in this poem is a bumper sticker. Save the Earth, there is no planet B. Dog tag. In second grade, I was issued a steel dog tag stamped with my name and address. Then, if the Russians bombed PS 89, our parents could find us in hospitals or bury us. I like to roll the beaded silver chain between forefinger and thumb. Dropping the last bead into a diamond-shaped hole in the clasp, I'd pull and the bead vanished. Over and over, my fingernail popped it out again. What kind of country gives its children dog tags? The same that lined us up in the lunchroom for polio shots. Classmates screaming behind a screen. A-bomb, H-bomb, sterilization by mumps. Old terrors succeeded by new. A popular debate with hands on the nuclear clock about to clap at midnight, reproduce or not. We who waited for yes, now wait for grandchildren. Maybe the war will end before Jin and Otessa can enlist. Maybe cops will pull daffodils from holsters and no one study to shoot up a kindergarten. Pray Shaquille and Padma scrub the air of arsenic and filter lakes florid with algae, drive electric cars. Hope they're young, lobes diamond studded with tracking chips. Choose planet A. This next poem is called Egg, and I spend part of the year in Florida, North Fort Myers on the Gulf Coast. I'll let you guess which part of the year. This is about leaving, packing up to leave usually the middle of May. So this year I had to leave the middle of March. There is an allusion here to Osip Mandelstam, but because of Stephen's poem, I don't have to say any more. You have all the details. Egg. Who imagines the future as it will happen? Did Mandelstam think he'd die for comparing Stalin's fingers to grubs? The night of his arrest, his wife invited Akhmatova for dinner and boiled her an egg. A fresh egg was a rare thing. Before the secret police took him, Mandelstam ate the egg Akhmatova offered with salt. I cleaned the refrigerator before leaving the place I've lived for 6 months. There's a carton with one egg left. The look of hibiscus beguiled me, and jasmine perfume for half a year. I cared for now, forget the future. Now, what should I do with this egg? Not enough for a meal, stale. Maybe good for a batch of pancakes. My mother said wasting food is a sin. There are people on this planet, thousands, who die for an egg. Though at my age it won't, I assume the future will be like now. My friends would laugh if I gave them a single egg. Would my mother laugh, or her mother, widowed with 3 children? I drop the egg. The disposal grinds it to a slurry that will be flushed and purified, mingled with the river and salting the sea. This is my lyric for failing to find one of the homeless vets camped by the river and giving him the egg. I kayaked once past a tent patched with a blue tarp, and Jeff, curious, wanted to paddle ashore. I could barely find breath to say no, so profound was the privacy of a sandy crescent between mangroves. A tent, a hibachi, a folding chair, a styrofoam cooler. Who could have dreamed this future? And an egg, what could one egg do to redeem it? This is a poem about friends of mine showing me a photo of my husband with another woman. And the story I allude to in this poem is The Dead by James Joyce. Ghost story. A ghost is neither here nor there. A ghost is trapped like the image between white scalloped borders in a snapshot friends gave me of my husband kissing another woman 5 years before we met. They're both so young. Jeff with his long hair, his girlfriend in a twin set. Crowded on the bed in a basement student apartment, aren't they the very spirit of love? If Jeff should gaze once more into her unlined face, he might yearn like the character who senses her lover's ghost in a tune sung at a Christmas party. Suddenly her husband understands their marriage, as dead as the boy whose voice his wife hasn't heard for 20 years. And what happens after I die? A widower reheats beef stew, and he's ready to live serenely, exchanging the gift of his life with a woman who ferments her own cabbage and beer. I'm going to read a few more poems. This next one is called Lonely in Japan, and the details are from an article that I read in the New Yorker a few years ago. And the facts are fact-checked, so what I've written here is true. Lonely in Japan. In Japan, you can hire a family if your wife has died and your daughter won't speak to you. You fill a form with their common gestures and favorite foods, nicknames, and hairstyles. Nights are loneliest, the blue face of the TV evident to revelers and dog walkers. Nights when you don't speak to a soul except yourself, talking to yourself a habit. Some think America's the loneliest place, miles between towns, neighbors you avoid because they own guns. An old Japanese woman raises her window shade each morning, watching the old woman across the courtyard raise her shade, expecting she will notice the day it stays down. But she forgets which window she's checking and whether someone new has moved into the other apartment. Some nights I watch the sun drop, the clouds go plumb, a loud splash from the pond, a susurrus of crickets, what whistles like a whippoorwill. None of these voices comforts me. Would I hire comfort? And what's the difference between a comforter and a friend? Job's comforters made things worse. Left without cattle, house and barn burned, children slaughtered. Job's wife said, "Curse God and die." Loneliness says the same. Maybe I'll hire a small god who washes my feet with water sprayed from his trunk. Out of our bodies we'd sail, over the Peace River, trumpeting our blessed detachment above the black mangroves whose salty leaves taste like tears. Admit there are more transistors in the world than leaves on trees. Admit this adds to the world's loneliness, as seen from the back of a small god, rented for a few hours like a hotel room in a city where your visa has expired. In a foreign capital with a population of 1, there's still hope that 1 will be your friend. This poem is called Dear Thirst, and I don't think there's anything I need to explain about it. Dear Thirst, water came before thirst, before sand, the sea, before the tides, the moon, and sun before earth. Bodies lived before love, and tender leaves before the hungry ate, raw food before the age of fire. Death came seconds after life, but some life won't die. A colony of seagrass older than the marsh that roots it, a fungus in Oregon larger than a blue whale. Fish drown in oil, seeds mutate, a bird falls from acid skies. The soul needs a soul-making veil, the lion a grass-fed lamb. Dear thirst, dear life, dear lack, before desire, the planet was no gorgeous world, Eden no poem, the tale no Troy, Helen a girl herding goats. I'm going to read one more poem. This poem is called Irish Music, and I think that this too is pretty self-explanatory. So, Irish music. A blind man with sight surgically restored can't recognize what he sees in blobs of color, puzzle shapes. He walks in a painting by Clay or Miro with no depth perception, everything's flat. To a woman with Alzheimer's, a dark red rug looks like a hole in the floor, a bloody hole. She can't open her front door without stepping past it and won't let anyone in, except a blind man maybe, who wouldn't notice anything amiss. In movies, a doctor unwraps enough bandages to succor a regiment before the big reveal. The hero can see again. In life, the newly sighted sometimes prefer darkness to looming abstractions accelerating past at hard to reckon speeds. So the operation is reversed, which allows the man to sit next to the demented woman, a sweet woman who loves Irish music, and hold her hand as long as it needs to be held. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you.
Joyce.
Thank you,
Thank you.
friends.
Thank you. I think some of you were with us last week, and we had a little bit of a conversation between Gail and Major, and then a couple questions from people. So before I open it up for that, I just also want to let you know that if you look at your chat, you will get information about getting books from Porter Square Books. And Stephen has going to have some books signed that will be there available, I believe, on Thursday. Was that it, Stephen?
I'm going to go down Thursday or Friday. Yeah.
Okay.
They'll ask me to come down.
Okay. So you can get some signed copies there, and we want to continue to support, obviously, Porter Square Books, who's always provided books for us in the past. But so I'm just going to open it up, and Joyce and Stephen, I know you all have been, as you mentioned, your poems have been going back and forth between you and Teresa for 15 years. So I don't know if you want to talk about that, or if you just want to take some questions if anybody has them.
I don't know, Stephen, I feel that it's become so much a part of my process to show poems to my readers. And I know that they'll tell me, they'll put a finger on exactly where the soft spots are. And I really rely on that because the mind is too close to itself. I know exactly what I mean, and often I need someone to tell me that something isn't clear. Maybe I go on and on and on a bit too much, or sometimes just the opposite, that I leave out too much. And so people who are so discerning and who know what I'm about, know what a poem is about, it's just so helpful to my process.
Yeah, the only I sometimes show a poem, and before I read it, I say, "Okay, Joyce, the first two stanzas go," right? Before I even read them. But there's also something that's happened over, I think, so many years, which is it's really not a workshop in that traditional sense. In some ways, it becomes very collaborative to the point where I'm not sure always whether that word choice is mine or Joyce's or Teresa's. We brainstorm over parts of poems, and that's not something that, at least in my experience, happens all that often in traditional workshops.
Yeah.
It makes me think of that, Pound's line, "It doesn't matter who writes good poems, it matters that they get written." Which, of course, nobody really believes. But it's an ideal, and that's what ideals are for, to
I guess we didn't exactly put our names on each other's books, so.
No, but I sometimes think it's, it's a collaborative work. And we also, not as often as I think we'd like, we bring in poems by other people that we just
Yeah.
go, I love this. Why do I love this?
Yeah.
Or I don't get this. Do you? And that's something that Lloyd, what you are doing.
Mm.
Poetry, I feel like it could be a lot more social if people would let it be, and that happens too. But I don't have any questions for you, Joyce, because you've answered them all already.
Does anyone out there have questions for Joyce or Stephen?
I was just going to say that the collaboration, whatever collaboration there is, seems invisible because Joyce is more Joyce than ever, and Stephen is more Stephen than ever, and it doesn't feel like a collaborative effort, and so whatever you're doing right.
And I think that's true with Teresa too. That in a way we know each other's work so well. The last thing we wanted to do is to sound like us.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I think that's I guess our goal is to make Stephen sound more like Stephen and Joyce sound more like
Right,
Joyce
right.
and Teresa sound more like
It's
Teresa.
working.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
So did you both discover Osip Mandelstam together, or did one of you introduce him to you, or vice versa? Obviously an important poet to both of you.
I first read Mandelstam in Merwin's translations with I think he worked with Clarence Brown, and those were the translations I knew. And then I bought this book. I forget the name of the translator, and I could compare some of the poems with Merwin's because some of them are, and what the mistake that it seems, I mean, I don't read Russian, but he tries to maintain the rhyme patterns, and you can just feel the padding and the archaic locutions, and actually the third of the three that I read actually rhymes, but the off rhymes are such that I hope they're disguised. But that's how I read Mandelstam first.
Yeah, I think I first read Mandelstam when I was in the 70s at the University of Michigan. There was actually a big Russian translation project there, and the publisher, though I can't remember exactly which translation I read, but I think we came to Mandelstam independently, Stephen and I.
Yeah.
Other thoughts or questions that people might have?
Yes. Hello, Joyce. This is a comment rather than a question.
Oh, hi, Julia.
Hello. Long time.
Long time.
I stopped on Stephen's comment or question about should poems be social, and I'm not a poet, although involved with the literary in some ways, marginal ways, I suppose. As a reader, I don't especially want poems to be social. I can understand that for poets, like other writers, it's such a pleasure to have a social aspect to the process. But I wrote the poems for what other kinds of things can't give me. And and for private places, and even what Joyce in some ways seems to frame as sort of spaces beyond loneliness, into those wilder terrains that I don't get in other things. I'm thinking of, Joyce, for example, your allusion to your poem that was in dialogue in a sense with the dead. And I'm thinking,
Mhm.
what's the difference for me between the work of a poet such as you and Joyce? Joyce is just extraordinarily social, even with
Mhm.
all of those monologues. You know, there's the sense of multiple voices.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
thank goodness poetry does something quite different from that.
Well, I guess it's though some of these poems, and certainly not all of them, but some of them are narrative and include narration and tell stories. Um, there's not as much, would I say, character development. I mean, the character who's developed is the character of the speaker, I think, and the speaker's response, the interaction between the speaker and the world, which is very intimate. And it's intimate rather than social, even when it takes on social questions and social institutions.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Anyone else have some thoughts or a question? Okay. Joyce and Stephen, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming
you.
and sharing the screen.
That was great.
Thank you. And
Very much enjoyed it.
yeah, and I hope
Thanks.
that we will see you all next Monday evening, same bat time, 7:15 p.m., same station. Okay, everybody have a really wonderful evening.
You
Enjoy
too.
London.
Bye.
All
Hi,
right.
you.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye.